Hello and welcome to our third Equally Inclusive Disability Confident event. My name is Emma Blackburn and I am the Employer Services Manager for Seetec Plus, and I am really pleased to be your host today. So, coming up for today, we've got Exeter University, who will be presenting research on economic and recruitment disability barriers. Then we'll be joined by some key employers in the Southwest to explore employer-led best practice and ways to improve inclusion in the workplace. We've got Cornwall Chamber of Commerce joining us to talk about a senior leader focus. Apex HR talking about a focus from human resources. We've got the Southwest Ambulance Service detailing a focus from a line manager perspective. And then we've got Compass Group with us to talk about employee retention. And then finally, we'll have National Careers Service with us to talk about employee training and the focus around that. So we'd absolutely love to have your input in today's interactive session. It would be great if you could let everybody know in the chat which company you're from and what you're aiming to get out of today. Please post any questions throughout the webinar, which we will present to our guest panel towards the end of the event. Questions can be submitted via watchchaos.tv or sent via the Facebook comments. Later, we will be joined by Geraldine Scott-Smith, our Digital Marketing Manager, who will be monitoring all of those questions that we receive and putting them to our panel of guest speakers. Feedback is very, very important to us, as it's invaluable to shape content for our future events. Helps us perform better. So throughout the webinar, a QR code will be visible on the screen. We would really appreciate it if you could scan the code using your phone and complete our quick online feedback form. So Seetec Plus can also support you with your disability confident and recruitment journey. If you'd like us to make contact to discuss your needs, you can either pop your email in the chat, starting with @JaneForrest, or scan the QR code and we will be in touch. Our aim today is to provide you with employer-led experiences of best practice to support you as an inclusive employer, particularly when recruiting and retaining staff with health conditions and barriers to employment. So why is it important to join and progress through the Disability Confidence Scheme? Most importantly, it is a commitment to challenge your existing recruitment practices and identify gaps. It's an opportunity to look at your recruitment practices through a different lens, giving disabled people confidence to apply for your job vacancies. The scheme encourages employers to offer a guaranteed interview if they meet minimum criteria, offer reasonable adjustments to support them to perform at their best during recruitment processes and subsequently in work. You should now, or very shortly, see a poll on the screen. Please do send your answer in to the following question. How many people are disabled in the UK? So the options there are 26 million, 22 million, 15 million, or 9 million. Today, we're going to explore the potential reasons and challenges that are preventing more employers from offering job opportunities to disabled people. We'll focus on specific roles within organisations. Then our special guest panel will be sharing best practice advice to give us top tips on how to recruit and retain disabled people. So our first guest is Ruth Gripper, Research Impact Manager at the Inclusivity Project from Exeter University. A very warm welcome to our first guest. Ruth is here today to talk from the Inclusivity Project about their research on bias and unconscious bias in the hiring process of disabled people. Thank you for joining us, Ruth.
Thanks, Emma. It's really great to be here with you today. It looks like a fantastic lineup that you've got. So I'll just try and set the scene a bit and share some of the work that we've been doing on the Inclusivity Project. So I've got a few slides. I hope they're visible for people. Lovely, thank you. There is a lot of depth and detail to the work that there isn't time to go into today. So if anyone's interested in finding out more, then you can, there's lots more on our website, which is the inclusivityproject.co.uk. And also we're on Twitter and Facebook. So as you can see, I'm from the University of Exeter, and the project has been a partnership with Age UK Cornwall and Isles of Scilly, the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Local Enterprise Partnership, and with Disability Cornwall as well. And we've been funded by the European Regional Development Fund. And really, we've been exploring issues to do with health and inclusion at work, particularly for older people, people with disabilities or long-term health conditions. And our work is focused in Cornwall, where we're a bit ahead of the rest of the country in terms of ageing population and people in those situations. And we also have lots of small businesses, which I think is really important and interesting when we're looking at some of the issues. But I think a lot of what I'll be talking about today really is much more widely applicable. So I'm going to share the findings from our work on bias. I'll share some of what we've done around job choice experiments and very, very briefly touch on sort of the wider system, because I want to try and leave some time to share some suggestions and reflections from conversations that we've been having with businesses and things that you can do in your own situation. Next slide, please. So I said I would talk about the work we've done around bias, and the cartoon here I think is a good illustration really of similarity bias. So that's our general tendency to prefer people who are similar to ourselves. So here we've got an interview panel, an interview board made up of 3 identical people, 3 men, identical moustaches, identical suits, and they're saying to the interviewee, who looks remarkably like them, frankly, Dinsdale, we like the look of you. So here we've got a similarity bias in action. Now, in our research, we used what's called the implicit attitudes tests. Many of you watching might be familiar with it. It's very widely used to measure unconscious bias, and there are lots of different versions of it available, looking at different characteristics. We used the disability version, and we were testing it out with the business community in the Southwest, and we were particularly interested to know, does it make any difference if you're based in a small company or a big company? Now, you might imagine that a larger organisation perhaps has more resource to put into sort of diversity initiatives. So could we see any difference in the levels of bias? And also, did it make any difference whether someone was in a HR or hiring role or not? Because we're dealing with small businesses, people aren't necessarily specifically HR, they might be wearing lots of different hats. So it was really that point of, if you're in that role where you're making those hiring decisions, could we see any difference? And if you could move to the next slide, please. The short answer to both of those questions is no, we didn't see any difference at all. What we found through the research was quite sort of significant levels of bias against disabled people. So the vast majority of people showing either slight, moderate or strong anti-disabled bias. And this is in line with sort of existing research and sort of the general population, if you like. And as I said, we didn't see any difference really between people that were involved in hiring decisions or not. And similarly with big and small companies, we didn't really see any difference in the findings. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So as I said, fairly high levels of bias against disabled people. The size of the company, being involved in hiring decisions didn't really make any difference in attitudes. Again, in line with sort of existing research, we found that women had slightly lower bias, and so did people with worse health. But I think one of the particularly interesting things or notable things that came through in the work we did there was how few disabled people are actually in those HR and hiring roles. So that's possibly something for us all to think about. And I guess the key lesson really from the research here is, we all have bias and, unconscious bias. It's unconscious. It's sort of our attitudes without thinking. And so really, in terms of what action can we take about this? Yes, it's partly about that awareness, but it's also accepting that bias is what it is and look at what steps we can take to prevent that unconscious bias sort of influencing decisions, and what protections can we put in place to prevent that bias from unduly influencing or to stop it being operative in practice. So that's all I'll say on bias for now. If you could move on to the next slide, please. The bias work looked particularly from the employer side of things, employer attitude. So we did that up with looking at employee attitudes or job seeker attitudes and wanting to understand what factors make a role more or less attractive for disabled people, and how do those differ from non-disabled people. And so the way that we did that was through a job choice study. So essentially, you choose the factors that you're interested in, that you want to understand people's priorities about, and then the participants are shown a series of choices. So they get to choose between job A and job B, and these two roles will differ slightly in each of these different areas. And through the course of that, you're able to essentially to surface people's preferences and priorities in terms of how valuable they think these different factors are for them. And I think what we can see, or what that study showed essentially was, the factors that we included were things that possibly you might think might be relevant or helpful for disabled people. So that was things around medical leave, flexible scheduling, working from home, and part-time roles. If you could move on to the next slide, please. The key takeaways from that really is that so both men and women, disabled men and women, value flexible, hybrid, and home working options. It's worth saying as well, so did non-disabled people, men and women, in all of these areas. But I think the particularly striking thing that came through in that work was the role of gender in that. And so that speaks, I suppose, to this sort of intersectionality question and how different characteristics sort of affect people differently. So women, whether disabled or non-disabled, particularly valued part-time working. And so I think for us, thinking about practice, the key lessons from that is that changes you might make with one particular group in mind actually often can have benefits for other people as well, other groups as well. So, an obvious example might be if you're thinking about physical access, making that easier for a wheelchair user, that's got benefits as well for people with mobility issues, for parents with buggies. So it's, actually the lesson here as employers, if we can be as flexible as we can be and make sure that people know about that flexibility and about what you offer as an employer. If you could move on to, I think if you maybe skip the next slide and move on to the findings from, I said I'd just very briefly touch on the systems work. I know we've got a packed agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time. Following on from those 2 points that I've spoken about, we did also look at how different factors are interrelated, how that wider system connects, and how different aspects, whether it's benefits or transport or attitudes, as we've just spoken about, the knock-on effects that they have. The key things that I'll just pull out from that work is really around the fear and misperceptions very often that can prevent people or put people off from employing inclusively. So there's misperceptions about what disabled people are capable of, about the costs of adjustment, and a lot of fear of getting things wrong. And that can be really self-perpetuating, because if those kinds of fears and uncertainties and anxieties mean that that disabled people aren't employed in your workplace, then those attitudes never get challenged and it becomes a self-perpetuating situation. I think if we look at that in a more positive light in terms of what we can do about it, I think actually it suggests that if we make a change, that can really make a difference. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. I'll just leave you with some suggestions or some reflections. I've spoken about being as flexible as you can be, spoken about the fear that a lot of businesses have. I think one really important lesson is to ask the expert. So everybody's situation is different. The individual is the expert in their condition. Don't be afraid to talk to people about what they need and what support can help them to do their job well. And I think finally, the most important thing is really to make that commitment to change, recognise that it takes time and effort, but you can make a difference. And particularly as a leader, if you show that you're committed to making that difference, your team will really pick that up. That was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you. I'll be sticking around. So if there's questions and further conversation, I'll be around for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruth. You raised some really, really good points there. Most interesting point for me, I think, is disability and being underrepresented in HR roles. That's a really good point. So back to our poll then. So I'm sure you're all keen to hear the answer of our earlier question, if you have refrained from Googling, that is. So there are, in fact, 14.6 million disabled people in the UK. That equates even to 1 in 5 people. 20% or over 20% of the population, and 40% of households have at least one disabled person. If that doesn't put into context how important this subject matter is, I'm not sure what will. So next we'll be hearing from Kim Conchi, CEO at the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. The purpose of the Chamber is to sit at the heart of a unique network of businesses to help further the interests of small businesses in their community. Cornwall Chamber of Commerce is a level 2 disability committed employer, and we've recently supported the Chamber with this piece of work. Thank you so much for joining us, Kim. I'm excited Brilliant. I'm excited to explore disability confidence from a senior leader viewpoint. So, as you know, we've got a few questions. So I'll start with, can you tell us what the Chamber's role is as a disability confident employer, please?
Yes, indeed, and delighted to be here, Emma, and thank you very much. And as everybody would expect at a forum like this, some themes will emerge, I think, as speakers follow one another. And we've worked very closely at the Chamber of Commerce with Ruth and her team on the inclusivity project, and particularly the most recent event we did together was our under 30 group, the sort of rising stars in Cornwall, to really keep them involved with the inclusivity project that Ruth runs. So that sort of gives a clue as to what I think the Chamber's role is, which is to be a role model, a thought leader to other employers. We've got a lot of influence because we're talking to thousands of businesses each week. So where we lead, hopefully, and we're a small business ourselves. I mean, we're 8 people in a small office in Redruth, a hybrid now, of course. And what we have had to do, which has actually been very trouble-free from our point of view. So we've shared some of our experiences as we've gone along, and from that point of view, I hope inspires other small businesses, which of course is the vast majority in Cornwall, slightly higher proportion of micro and small businesses here than the national average, that they can do it without too much trouble. I think there's a perception that it is going to cost a business money, but actually with us, with working with our landlord, because we lease our offices, it's been very trouble-free and been a pleasure. And I know we're going to come on now, Emma, with some of the questions. It's been a really engaging area for the whole team to get involved in and feel that we're all doing something right and proper sort of thing. So it's been, it's a sort of really important role for us. We had 6 what we call policy making frameworks. One of them was well-being in the workplace, and one was inclusivity, and we've just put them together under people, which I think is something that very much that Cornwall's leading on, this sort of triple bottom line of people, planet, profit. And we've put these policies together under people, and therefore leading very much on the inclusivity and looking positively at recruiting people who, as you said in your introduction, don't necessarily look like me.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Kim. So what would you say are the current, and I agree, the demographic of business in Cornwall is definitely different, slightly different to the rest of the country. So what would you say are the current socio-economic and recruitment and retention challenges specifically for business in Cornwall?
Well, interestingly, there are challenges and things we can lead on here. Challenges are, as I said, that we've got a slightly higher than the national average proportion of micro businesses, and they are not blessed with somebody in the HR department who can have these inclusivity policies at their fingertips and that sort of thing. So, and often they're in leased or borrowed buildings where they're not in charge of adapting the building necessarily. But what that does mean in Cornwall, Emma, is that 97% of Cornwall's business owners live in Cornwall and are embedded in communities, and therefore the stats, as you've shown them, mean that they are very close to people in the community who will have disabilities, physical, mental, of one description or other, and they're not a sort of thing that scares them. So there is the opportunity here in Cornwall, because the businesses are so much part of the community. It's not so, running a business, owning a business in Cornwall is not something that a distant fat cat does. It's something that 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people do in Cornwall, and that gives us a massive opportunity here to be thought leaders. And if you can inspire those that large number of people who've got some influence in their small business to be leading on disability inclusivity, then I think we can really lead the way in this. So there's opportunities here as well as challenges. The challenges are, well, wages in Cornwall are still 79% of the national average. So there's a perception that people aren't going to stay. They're often in seasonal, 0 hours, part-time work, and employers are reluctant to make adaptations for those people. It's a vicious circle because they're in those part-time work in what's historically low paid industries, and they're low paid not because employers are mean or wanting to low pay them. It's because the sectors which are very important in Cornwall, like hospitality, retail, care, agriculture, construction, are historically very patchy in productivity, and therefore it's difficult to sort of train and keep people. But as what you're striving to do at Seetec and what we're trying to do at the Chamber of Commerce, to bring these employers and other practices as well, like training and so on, into the 21st century, there'll be a better realization that you need to retain people. So train and retain is a phrase which I use quite a lot, and we need to do that, because staff churn is a massive hidden cost to small businesses. And I think my challenge to colleagues of Ruth at the University of Exeter is, at the moment, an employer looks at the bottom right-hand corner of their spreadsheet and sees, is it in the red or the black? In the black, that's a measure of a good business. And what we need is an easily accessible measure of actually the whole environmental, social and governance concerns of a business, so that an employer and the directors, the department heads, can see very easily whether they're doing things correctly or not. So I'd like to throw that out as a bit of a challenge to have that as a measure of business success, in the same way that financial success over the hundreds of years past is. And then we're at a very pivotal moment as we speak, because EU funding, which Cornwall's benefited from extensively, is coming to an end during 2023, and the UK government's successor to that scheme, the Shared Prosperity Fund, which everybody needs to be aware of. If you Google good growth hub.com, or I think it is, you will begin to get an understanding of what shared prosperity might mean. And I think you need to make sure that the funding that's coming into Cornwall going forward is applied to inclusive employers and enabling small employers to adapt for the inclusivity which we all cherish and want to increase.
Definitely. I completely agree with all of that. Finally, Kim, what are your top tips to get everyone on board with disability confident and involving employees to shape inclusion policy and direction?
Well, I think what we've at Cornwall Chamber of Commerce, what we've had is have it as one of our frameworks. So we then put it on every meeting, whether it's a team meeting or whether it's a board of directors meeting, and we're having a combined away day this year as well. So it's there as one of the things that we're having to measure, that we're looking at. We're having to put in our case as a chamber, events, activities, promotion, marketing around inclusivity, and then it's up everybody's list of concerns then. So that would be one. Make sure that it is on your every agenda, every meeting agenda. It's on there as a thing that you're going to consider. Senior team updates communicated to everyone in the organisation, so we don't have any gaps. We're very open leadership team at the Chamber of Commerce, so everybody feels they can add. And as I said, with the under 30s group in Cornwall Chamber of Commerce, I think they are more attuned to the inclusivity agenda. So we have a really free flow of information upwards and downwards about things that can be done to improve that. Making sure employees' voices are heard. In our case, making sure that members' voices are heard, like Seetec, and not to be frightened of this issue of terminology that you mentioned at the beginning. If you're an open and I'm very much of the school of sort of the servant leader. So the leader of the organisation is to serve, in our case, my colleagues, but more importantly, the businesses of Cornwall. We're all on a journey. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to go down blind alleys occasionally, but not to be frightened of those, and ask experts where we can to make sure that we're not doing something because we're just frightened of what the not saying the right word or not having the right facilities in our building to serve them or whatever. Just be inclusive, open and transparent, and the opportunities will come. And I think I've always felt, when I had my own business as well, that I like diversity in teams. Teams work better when you've got people with different perspectives and different life experiences. And I think, again, not to be aware of that unconscious bias of favouring people like you, and actually do the opposite, favour people not like you, who are bringing different skills, different perceptions to the team. From there, you get real, even in a small business, you get different opportunities, and actually the impact on the impact you can have with the rest of the world, your customers, your suppliers, your colleagues, potential recruits, and so on, is massive, because you're just out there. And I think at the moment, with labour being such a shortage still, we all need to give these messages of inclusivity out so we can get some of these over 50s back into the workplace that we're hearing so much about at the moment. And if people, we're not all tied these days to a sort of 9 to 5 days a week. Get people in flexible work times, so that if it's somebody with physical or mental issue that they don't want to be in the office at 9 till 5, or in the workplace, I should say, at 9 till 5 every day, perhaps they can work from home part-time, perhaps they can come in the evenings when there's not so many people around. Make sure you're being really flexible in your approach. And that becomes, in tough times like this, Emma, becomes financially and commercially sensible, as well as the right thing to do, because we need to get everybody back into the workforce, really. So I think we're at a moment where this message is cutting through like never before.
I completely agree. Thank you so much, Kim. Really, really interested
Pleasure.
to hear about the fantastic work happening at the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. So there should now be a QR code on the screen for you to scan and give your feedback. So please do. As I say, it's very, very important to us. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Kevin Miller, Chief Humanity Officer for Apex HR. Apex HR provides humanistic, people-centred solutions. Kevin is here today to look at disability confident through the lens of HR, to help organisations remove recruitment practice barriers, and to help steer them in the direction of doing things differently to reach that 1 in 5 wider pool of applicants, which, as Kim mentioned, with the labour shortages that we're seeing and the skills gap that we're seeing in the economy, is really, really important. Kevin, welcome back. It is wonderful to have you with us again.
I'm very happy to be here again, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got a few questions, as you know. I'll just start right away with, from your experience, from working with employers, what are the common HR barriers to attracting, recruiting and retaining people with disabilities?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. So I think there are a number of opportunities here for HR to really influence and champion positive change. And in order to do that, I think we've got to address some of those underlying barriers that we see. So just a couple of things to share with you, really, just to provide a couple of examples. So first of all is, I think, a basic understanding of the relevant law in this area. So I think we're talking about things like the Equality Act 2010. Just having that basic knowledge and understanding around what the legal obligations are on employers and on managers when they're managing their teams is very helpful. I think also there's a barrier around, so there are some stubborn myths and stereotypes about the employment of people with disabilities. So there's maybe myths around people with disabilities will have higher sickness, they'll take too long to onboard, and there'll need to be a lot of costly adjustments. And actually, the studies show and the evidence show that people with disabilities are just as productive as people who don't have disabilities, but they actually take on average less time off and they stay in their jobs longer. So there are many business benefits. I think perhaps a barrier around raising some awareness to look at disability more holistically, because we know not all disabilities are visible. So we need to be thinking about more neurodiverse practices and support for people, especially from a mental health point of view. And then I think finally, a big barrier I see is around openness of early disclosure between the person with the disability and the employer. So it was even a couple of days ago, I read an article in HR magazine, which said that less than a third of people with disabilities said they would actually disclose that on their application. And also around 30% of people with disabilities believe that employers only offered jobs in order to fill a quota. So I think we've got to really challenge a lot of these stereotypes and myths and build a much more inclusive approach.
I agree, absolutely. So your organisation has a humanistic HR philosophy. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. I mean, it's one of the reasons my job title is Chief Humanity Officer, because I believe with a passion that if we keep humanity at the heart of business, then everybody benefits. And Kim mentioned in the previous session around how more inclusion is actually not just better for people, but actually better for the bottom line. So I think in terms of a humanistic philosophy, I think it's championing that people-centered approach at every opportunity. And that's about talking inclusion in all forms, whether it's disability, age, sexual orientation, gender. So we're looking at things holistically, but not just talking about these things, Emma, but making sure our behaviours are aligned with those values. And for me, the humanistic approach is actually about championing the compelling business case for more inclusion, because as Kim again mentioned, better inclusion on teams means better demonstrable impacts for our bottom line. It means better problem solving capabilities. It also means businesses are more likely to be representative of the customer base and communities they're serving.
I agree, absolutely. So what are the key drivers for human resource professionals to deliver an inclusive recruitment practice? You've mentioned that almost mirroring your customer base and helping that diversification helps with that. But would you say there are other sort of key drivers?
Yeah, I think there are a number, Emma, and I really like Ruth's point earlier around actually a key driver is encouraging more people with disabilities to enter the HR profession and become part of that hiring process so they can bring those unique perspectives to play. I think there are huge opportunities for HR to be a catalyst here to support businesses, especially around the challenges with recruitment and retention and access to that wider talent pool. And I also think there's some drivers around challenging some of the myths and misconceptions about reasonable adjustments, because often I think some employers might feel reasonable adjustments are going to be expensive. And actually, the overwhelming majority of reasonable adjustments are cost-free. They're just about more inclusive working patterns, more flexibility, and just ensuring that if someone has a disability, we're setting that person up for success to do that job to the best of their ability. And the final thing I think is, and this is where I see HR can play a key role, Emma, is simplifying and streamlining our hiring processes, because often they become too complicated with too many steps. So simplifying and streamlining and making that more accessible, I think, again, there are big opportunities there.
I agree completely. Ironically, and I quote this many times, it's often the hiring process is the barrier to employment, which
Absolutely.
is crazy in itself, isn't it? So finally, do you have any top tips or sort of starting points for implementing inclusivity in the workplace, Kevin?
I do indeed. So I would also always say that training for managers is just crucially important. We want to empower and enable managers with the knowledge, skills, and confidence in this area. For example, what we do with Apex with our clients, we break those responsibilities down in the very, very simple and basic level in terms of management essentials, so managers do feel confident. As I've mentioned, there are lots of quick wins around challenging the status quo with your current hiring practices. Are our job adverts written in a simple and user-friendly way? Do we make those job adverts genuinely inclusive? Do we think when we're looking at our job descriptions and person specifications, are they genuine, relevant requirements for the job? Or have they just become needlessly overcomplicated, which is something we often see? And also, I think when we're conducting interviews, and again, not only is it a legal requirement, but we want to make those processes inclusive. We want to check with the candidate and the applicant, is there any adjustment you need so that you can secure a fair interview? And also in terms of promoting the hugely valuable work you do at Seetec around the Disability Confidence Scheme. And if you do meet those minimum requirements, we will guarantee you an interview. I think all of those represent huge opportunities for us.
And none of it's that difficult, is it, Kevin? That's the point. I think this is all stuff that, most employers are doing, should be doing, could be doing very, very easily.
Absolutely. I think the top tip is always for me, generate conversations, be curious, promote that awareness and that understanding, talk to colleagues. There doesn't have to be any fear around this, because what we know is when we create a more inclusive workplace, that's not just better for our business, it's actually better for wider communities. We have those ripple effects, and we all have a role to play in that. But we can't just reduce it to a policy alone. Policies are important because it says what we stand for, but we've got to have those accompanying behaviours so that we actually put that into practice.
100%. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your input, as always, Kevin.
It's always a pleasure, Emma, and I will be around later. So if anyone's got any questions specifically with the HR role in all of this, I'll be delighted to respond.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you should shortly be able to see another poll on the screen. So please do submit your answer, and I'll share the actual answer later in the session. So, how many disabled people of working age are in the UK today? Is it 10.9 million, 6.8 million, 4.7 million, or 3.9 million? Again, please do submit your answer, and we will come back to that shortly. So next we have a video from the South Western Ambulance Service Trust. You will see the South West Ambulance Service is a Disability Confident Level 3 leader, and we've recently validated their renewal award. They've kindly agreed for our partners Chaos TV to film at their workshop in Derriford Hospital to gain an insight of disability confidence through the lens of managers offering their best practice solutions to support a new recruit, Jamie, who is disabled in the workplace. I think you'll find this video very inspiring.
Welcome to the South West Ambulance Service and Derriford workshops. Today we're talking about our disability confident leadership status and what it actually means to us, especially around our recruitment and retention and our managers and our leaders, and actually how important it is to us. Hello, my name is Karen Holsworth-Cannon. I am the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Lead, and I've been with the ambulance service just a year. Being disability confident leader is really important to the South West Ambulance Service because it actually gives us the ability to actually look at strategic influences around actually how we employ people and actually how we retain people who are applying to our service. It also enables us to actually look at the demographics of the South West region. So we know in the South West that 22 to 25% of the South West have a disability, but we also know from the data that we have only about 5% of our workforce are actually disabled. So we know that there's a hidden talent of people that actually are looking for work and actually probably want to work for us. So actually it's about how we tap into that hidden talent and actually recruit and retain people. So we as a South West Ambulance Service know that 22 to 25% of the population are disabled. We also know that actually from the 999 phone calls that we receive, that actually 37 to 57% of the phone calls are made from disabled people. So actually if you look at it, we should be representing the community that we serve, and that, you know, that in terms of inclusivity, that's incredibly important to us.
Julian Chudley, I'm a Derriford Fleet and Equipment Team Leader and been with the Trust for 12.5 years. I started the team leader role in July, August, so it's a whole new team, but we've had Karen from Equality and Diversity and Inclusion. She's been working really closely with us, keeping us up to date as to policies and procedures within the Trust. But basically, it's being given the tools to everybody's the same and within the workplace. There's lots of equipment in here that could be dangerous to some people, but it's giving them the advice and the instructions on how to use it as well. But yeah, we're kept up to date through Karen, really. We've recently employed Jamie. Jamie's got Tourette's. He joined us, I think, about 2 months ago, but we're working closely with Karen and Jamie. We've had to adapt the workshop a little bit. We've got special instructions on some of the tooling so Jamie can actually read how the equipment works before operating it. A couple of measures we put in place for him, but he's a valued member of the team. We can trust him to do brakes and stuff on his own now, and yeah, he's moving forward. We've adapted the workshop slightly. All the bits of equipment have got the health and safety documentation on them as to how to use. If he's not sure on anything, he's to ask, which he does. When Jamie first came, his attention span was very short. So you'd be lucky if you had like 90 seconds of his attention, but now he's settling down and learning to like ground himself, and that he's now spending a lot longer on the jobs with the technicians going through it. We've got 4 technicians, 2 are in today, the others are on off shifts, but we've all signed up to be a disability buddy for Jamie through the SWAS. Karen's leading it and basically giving us all the training we need to be his buddy.
So my name's Rich Buckley. I'm the Head of Resource Management for the Trust and one of the Strategic Commanders, and I've been in the service for 27 years. All of our managers will have training in the Equality Act as part of their on-board training. Our HR business partners, our HR BPs, are an integral part of our team as well, and each week we will have meetings with them. We'll run by any problems we've got, we'll run by any issues, we'll run through anything we're not sure the best way to manage, and we'll have that expert advice to ensure we're doing the right things for our team. And we also have Karen, who is just inspirational and really shows us what we can benefit from as well as what we need to do. When we took Jamie on as a member of our team here, the whole team bought into the support we would need to give Jamie, but not as something extra to their role. It was an integral part of what they were doing and something they just saw as being natural. We check that through our regular meetings, through our regular touch points and through action plans if we need to. There will always be anxiety around additional work that comes with supporting somebody with a disability. We need to get to the point where we myth bust, we show the benefits as well as the extra work, but the reward you get from integrating somebody into the team and allowing them to grow and thrive just beats anything else we can do, and we're seeing that in Jamie. It's one of our proudest things.
Anybody who's employed is employed because they have skills and they bring their innovation, they bring their oomph to an organisation. Now, certain people with certain disabilities, they bring their innovation in abundance. So from my experience, somebody with ADHD, they're really good at looking at patterns, they're looking at innovations. I've worked with somebody with autism that brought absolutely fantastic coding skills. You know, and actually you don't want to sort of like put people in boxes, you want them to allow them to flourish, you know. I worked for a manager that actually brought this phrase of allowing people to be glamorous goddesses and gods to the workplace because of their disability, and it just resonated with me. I mean, I was in my early 20s, I'm in my 50s now, I have a disability, and actually that expression of bringing the glamorous goddess and god to the workplace because of your disability really brings it for me, because it's allowing them to flourish and retain their skills. Hi Jamie, I'm Karen. Do you want to say who you are and what you do at South West Ambulance Service?
Hi Karen, I'm Jamie. I'm the Intermediate Workshop Technician at South Western Ambulance Service Trust.
Okay, and I'm Karen Holsworth Cannon, and I am the Equalities and Diversity and Inclusion Lead. Hi. Alright, so Jamie, could you tell me why you applied for a job at the South Western Ambulance Service?
I thought it looked really cool and it looked really fun as well. Okay. And I also wanted to better my opportunities for the future.
So when you went for your interview, how did you find the interview process?
At first I found it stressful, but then when I was in the interview, they weren't making me stressed or anything. They were quite relaxed and happy. I got a drink of water, and I remember Julian and James saying to me that they're not discriminating against disabilities. They encourage people with disabilities to go to work in different places where we may not have as many people with disabilities. Also, Tourette's and ADHD is a little bit different in the workplace compared to anxiety and everything, because I'll probably end up hitting my head on something, hence I get bump caps to protect me a little bit more. I was also quite nervous because it's a new environment and I don't do well with change, but I came here and I felt very comfortable.
That's good. So how do you feel that you get treated in the workshop? Do you feel that you get supported from your fellow colleagues?
Yeah, I get treated the exact same as everybody else, except the difference being that I have to, my work gets double checked because my confidence isn't fully 100% yet, and I'd rather go out being safe and come back not being safe, because at least then you can go, oh, it was double checked and sorted out, and that's the problem solved.
But you're still training to be a vehicle technician, so all the trainees get their work checked, don't they? Yeah. But in terms of being a supportive employer, do you feel that we are supporting you enough?
Yeah. I'm very, compared to other places, I'm really well supported here, to be fair, because I say, it's like places, as soon as you just say you've got Tourette's, they're like, no. I don't know why. It's not like they have to assure me on it, but.
What would your tips be, Jamie, for anybody in your position who has a disability looking for work?
Oh, I tell them to keep trying. Keep trying is the most important thing, because that way, because if you give up on yourself and you're just not going to achieve anything, once you get back up and start going towards different things that put you out of your comfort zone, you might not like it, but over the years, as you grow up, you'll get more used to it.
Well, all I can say, Jamie, is thank you so much for applying to the South Western Ambulance Service. You're an absolute asset to the Derriford Workshop team, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for applying.
Pleasure to work with you all too.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of the team at the South Western Ambulance Service NHS Foundation Trust, and especially to Jamie for sharing his story. What an inspiration. And like he says, just keep trying, a true inspiration. Really, really lovely to hear his story. So the poll results, when they appear, we have more than 4.7 million disabled people are in work. So you can see the results on the screen. That was the correct answer. This is an increase from 2013, where the number employed was nearly 2.9 million. The Disability Confidence Scheme helps to reduce the disability employment gap and has very ambitious plans to get 1 million more disabled people into work by 2027. We need the support of employers to ensure this is achieved. So next we have our guest, Stuart McManus. An aspect of Disability Confident is to develop and retain disabled people. I would like to introduce Stuart, who's our neurodiversion practitioner at Seetec Plus, who will share his experience of how encouraging employee disclosure can catapult a wave of change to benefit both employer and employee.
So hi there, my name is Stuart McManus and I work for Seetec Plus, primarily as a training and wellbeing facilitator, but I also sort of take the lead on neurodiversity projects and looking at mental health and inclusion in general really, and was asked to come on today to talk to you about sort of how inclusion evolves, continuously evolves, and how we're always sort of thinking outside the box and thinking on our feet really as part of the journey. If I could have the first slide, please, that would be great. So as it says on the slide there, it all started with a chat, and I was talking just randomly with the CEO for Employability and Health with Seetec Plus. We run things like the Restart Programme, the Work and Health Programme, and we were chatting about neurodiversity in general. Both of us have a very personal interest in this. My eldest child has quite high-functioning Asperger's, so it's a subject that I'm sort of hugely passionate about, especially having to sort of guide him through his young life to where he is now, where he's finally sort of moved into work and has got his own place. It's been a battle, and I wanted to make sure that we could try and make a bit of a difference so that other people didn't have the same battles that we faced with that. And realised that the CEO of our company was in a very, very similar position, and we had a really sort of open and honest conversation about just how poorly understood neurodiversity still is, and how, you know, a very sort of, there is a gaping sort of hole there with terms of support and understanding, and still a fear attached to it, you know, with people that don't understand it very well. So it was a random conversation. If I could have the next slide, please. And it led to an in-depth conversation about how we could support our own colleagues better. You know, we do these wonderful things for participants on our programs, but how were we actually looking after our colleagues? You know, we've got some 2,000 people that work for Seetec Group as a whole. And if you go by the statistics that are around today, you know, that's sort of in excess of 300 people that will have an actual diagnosis in neurodiversity. But it's probably more likely to be around about 400 to 500 people within the company that will be struggling with the day-to-day difficulties associated with neurodiversity. It might not necessarily be autism, but it might be dyslexia, dyspraxia, it might be Tourette's or something like that. So there are so many conditions within the actual sort of umbrella of neurodiversity that we need to be looking after people better. And, you know, we wanted to look at how we were doing that, and what support was available to people, what we could do better, just to make sure that the actual colleague journey within Seetec Plus and within Seetec Group as a whole is better for people, so that we actually retain staff better, so that we're utilising their skills a little bit better, and supporting people properly within their environment at work and beyond really as well. Similar conversations were had around things like mental health as well. Another thing that is sort of a huge passion of mine and something that I take the lead on quite often, making sure that the people that are struggling with things like that. So again, 500 plus people, you could say, within our company would be struggling on a day-to-day basis with long-term mental health problems. That's not including the short-term problems that would be sort of created around, you know, day-to-day working job roles, you know, where something comes up and it causes that anxiety for you. So again, it was looking at everything as a whole. If I could have the Next slide, please. This then led to Seetec Group, HR department, looking at it going, actually, are we doing enough? Are we actually supporting people well enough within the company? And I was invited to join the group looking at our inclusion strategy and coming up with ways of doing things a little bit better. So it was recognising what we do and what we do well, but it was sort of going a little bit deeper and looking at what we could do that was a little bit better. This included things like managers' toolboxes to make sure that they've got all of the things available to them to be able to to help people that come into their team or that are already on their team that are struggling with some of these inclusive conditions that we've spoken about. Setting up things like focus groups, so that we're actually looking at neurodiversity as a whole, looking at mental health as a whole, making sure that we've got those networks in place to be able to support people a little bit better, and so that we can actually put those changes into place. Peer support groups as well for staff. We do so much of this for participants on our programs, but are we actually doing that for our own staff? It's kind of practicing what you preach, really, I guess. So it was looking at setting up those so that people that have got neurodivergent conditions can actually have somewhere to go to be able to share that with people. It might be people that want to be able to support people better, that want to join in with those groups so that they can actually have a better understanding coming straight from people that are struggling with those things day to day. Job carving, looking at things like that, playing to the strengths of the team, so that you might have somebody within the team that's particularly good at one thing but has an anxiety attached to something else. How do we utilize the strengths of that? So it's looking at things like the recruitment process, the onboarding process, and the continuation of the journey while you're employed with us, and making sure that we're getting it right and focusing on those groups that are maybe sort of underrepresented or not quite as sort of fully understood. And like I said, neurodiversity kind of plays a massive, massive role in that. And it's trying to get it right. It's trying to see that from a business perspective, we could actually perform even better if we were supporting our staff better. When you look at like the environmental side of things, there's somebody within my own local office that struggles quite a lot with ADHD and the symptoms that go with that, that requested just a quiet area where they could actually stand and do their work quietly in a corner somewhere. So we looked at things like that and how to develop those kind of things, and then looking at that company-wide and thinking, have we got the spaces within our offices to be able to provide that company-wide rather than just sort of individual offices as a whole. So the whole kind of scope is, I should say, being looked at, not was, because it's something that I'm working on at the moment, and it's making sure that we put those things into place. So if I can have the final slide, please. It was just to share with all of you today, that inclusion in general is an ever-evolving process. We've got so many things that we get right, but there are so many things that we still need to do. It's something that will never stop developing. It's learning how to do things better, but it's also learning from the people that are struggling with those things to do better. So it comes down to listening a lot more, supporting our own teams, providing an inclusive environment and a working platform that will enhance the business as well. It won't just make it better for them, it will actually enhance the business, for you. It will increase the productivity. If we get those people in the right places and they're comfortable doing what they do, then their productivity is going to go up. So even if you put your corporate hat on and you put your business hat on, you're going to realise that actually it's going to be beneficial for you as a whole as well. There are so many incredible people out there. They have got these unique skills, and it's just trying to make sure that we're unlocking that. So even as a disability confident leader, Seetec are still every day looking at how we're doing, how we could do things better, and evolving what we do on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today, was that we are, continuously looking at ways of doing things better. We're joining forces with other people. We're learning from other groups how they do things to make sure that we can provide that support, not only to our participants, but actually to our staff as well. Because at the end of the day, if we get it right with our own people, we're going to get it right with, with the people that we're trying to support on our programs. So thank you for letting me come on and chat to you guys today, and happy to discuss further if anyone wanted to after today. Thank you very much.
How that works to ensure that representation is there. So next we have Melanie Aston with us. Melanie is Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the Compass Group. The Compass Group is a Disability Confident Level 3 leader. It is well known that employees who do not feel valued or do not have a voice within an organisation will often check out, seek alternative employment. Melanie is here today to talk about how creating employee networks, Compass have helped retain and develop their workforce. Melanie, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. So can you tell me why it's important to the Compass Group to be disability confident?
Yeah, for sure. So Compass, I mean, to be fair, provides the most amazing opportunity to embrace and include talent from all backgrounds and abilities. And we're already doing it in some areas, but we really need to feel we need to expand on it. And I think in the UK and Ireland, which is the area of the business I cover, we employ over about 45,000 people. So there's plenty of jobs and opportunities for us to be really inclusive. And I think if we open our minds to that wider pool of talent, we can really help address our labour shortages that we have within the industry, but also bringing people in from different talents and perspectives and lived experiences into the organisation, I think is really important and makes really good business sense, but also good for talent that's seeking employment. So that's just our kind of main aim. And probably just to correct you slightly, we're level 1 and 2 from a disability confident perspective, just to put that there as well.
Sorry about that error.
That's
Thank you. So the employee voice is championed as an integral part of an inclusive disability confident culture. Please can you tell us about the launch of your employee ability network?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's been a really exciting time. So we really understand that some of the barriers that people with disabilities often face isn't always around that physical need. Sometimes it's around a structural adjustment, but a lot of the time it can be around that attitude and assumptions that people may make about ability, and potentially only seeing the problems and not always the opportunity. So with this in mind, we really wanted to extend the range of employee networks that we already have. So we already have networks for gender, ethnicity, mental health, LGBTQ+, and now our newly formed ability network. So we really want to be able to raise awareness, educate ourselves, and really include as many brilliant people as we can within the business. So we did a soft launch at the end of, the launch week was International Day of Persons with Disability on the 3rd of December. And we really just set the scene really around our aim around raising awareness and educating, but also the challenges faced by employees and also our customers who really identify as having a disability, and that can either be visible or non-visible. So we wanted to really create that inclusive workplace, highlight those benefits that people with disabilities bring to the workplace, and help us support in attracting new employees. So before we kind of take a step back, I guess, before we launched the actual physical network, how we approached it was around launching kind of a small working group back in the summer of last year, and that was really made up of people across a variety of our sectors within the business, and some had people with disabilities, some were just allies, and we really just wanted to start that conversation with people. And really, from a personal level, I think I found that really helpful, just to sort of that starting point of having more focused conversation around the topic and really bringing those different experiences and perspectives to the table.
Brilliant. I love the name, Employee Ability Network. So how did you share and communicate your initial findings with the team and wider Compass Group? With 45,000 employees, that can't be an easy task.
It's never an easy task, and one we daily challenge, but we try and do what we can, and I think there's a variety of ways that we can do that through our existing employee networks are really key because they're the ones that are perhaps more connected to our frontline teams, but it's also our HR teams, our line managers that are pivotal again for that connection with those frontline colleagues, but it's also important that it comes from all levels, and I think getting the buy-in from our exec and senior leadership teams was crucial as well. So it was coming from sort of top and bottom up, and really asking people to come forward to join us on this journey. And I'm pleased, we kind of sent the message out, as I said, at the beginning of December, and we've taken January to try and raise awareness through our social channels and various communications, and we've had quite a positive response to date. So we're bringing everyone together next Friday actually to form our first kind of initial meeting really and kick off to really listen to them, hear ideas, gain some feedback, and really start putting some of our goals in place really for the rest of the year. Really discussing kind of what do they want, what are the issues, challenges and successes that we as a business can work together on. So we're really lucky that we've got some areas of the business where disability is already happening. There's a key focus with some areas of the business. So it's critical that we kind of also share those examples that really help then support to guide people and how to approach it. And I think sometimes, and I think some of my predecessors have mentioned, sometimes it's just hearing from other people, hearing about that lived experience or how people have approached it that really brings it to life. And I guess lastly, some of our external partnerships are really crucial for us helping to achieve our aim as well, and to really help us grow our knowledge and support our colleagues within the business.
Brilliant. It sounds like, I suppose, in a nutshell, it's getting that buy-in, isn't it? Sharing that information and gaining that buy-in. So best of luck with the first sort of official meeting, as it were. So how do you support and engage your line managers to be disability confident and encourage them to be sort of active allies? We know that disability confident makes perfect sense from a HR perspective. We know that, the vast majority of organisations absolutely want to be disability confident. I think that the challenge that I've always seen is ensuring that communication and that kind of mindset almost, and that culture is throughout the business. So how do you support your line managers to be disability confident?
I think it comes from the overall kind of inclusive kind of environment and culture that we have within Compass. And I think a few years ago, we launched our Dignity at Work programme, which was an online programme that was mandatory for all colleagues. And it was all really based around promoting that kind of fairness and equality in our organisation, and that commitment that we've got for a culture where everyone can really feel they can belong. So what we did last year was then create a sort of second series to that. So that was already well cemented within the business, but actually kind of moving that to a next level and creating an additional suite of mandatory kind of online modules. That again, we kind of put under the umbrella of hashtag Call It Out. And it was all around really supporting our commitment to continue that inclusive workplace. So that went out to frontline line managers and everybody within the business. And we launched topics such as sexual harassment back in March last year and a race module in November. So we've had really good responses so far and good feedback and uptake. So our next module will be around disability. And to answer your kind of key question around what we do for line managers, that's really a key part, because actually it's creating that awareness and opening up the conversation for people to have those conversations. I think as a large and a diverse organisation that we are, it's sometimes around setting those clear expectations around the behaviours, and key really for building that kind of workplace inclusive culture that we can make sure that everyone really thrives. So we hope to raise awareness and educate, which is kind of what our kind of mantra is as we look at all areas of D&I, but in particular as we look at disability, and make sure that everybody understands they've got a part to play in treating everyone with that respect and dignity, and that active allyship is really crucial to that. So additional ways that we kind of support and engage with the line managers to help them along that journey is the mandatory training that I've just referenced. But it's also around some informal education. So we do that through a number of ways, some of which are inclusivities, which are kind of 30-minute webinars, podcast style sessions, which are led by people within the business sometimes, but also external lenses as well. We've also got a reverse mentoring programme within the business, which is based around ethnicity at the moment, but I can really see a good adaptation for disability, and for us to really be having those conversations and hearing a bit more one-to-one about what more we can do. And then, of course, we've got a D&I calendar, which has a real key focus on awareness and celebration. So we find that really helps engage those line managers and get them to share that message.
Brilliant. I love that. Inform, educate, and ultimately call it out. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Melanie. It's great to hear about all of the great things that are happening at Compass Group, and I wish you every success on your journey.
No problem. Thank you, Emma. Lovely to be here.
Now we have some insight into how National Careers Service can support employers on their journey. You'll hear from Jill Brinsden, a business manager from National Careers Service. presenting their 3 bespoke training offer for employees and employers to support organisations' growth, staff retention and well-being.
Good afternoon. So my name is Jill Brinston and I am the Business Manager for National Career Service in Devon and Cornwall. So I'm going to talk to you today about the employee support that National Career Service offer. So I'm going to let you into a huge secret. This is the best known secret probably, that National Career Service offer support to employers and employees. So over the course of the next few slides, what I'm going to do is explain a little bit about how we work, what we do, what my team of careers advisors can offer you, and then hopefully you'll be very interested and will get in touch with me and my team. So the contacts are on my slides, and I believe that the slides are going to be made available after the end of this session. So please do get in touch. Next slide, please. So National Career Service, as I said, we work with those who are in employment. So we spend a lot of time working with employers, helping employers meet their needs. So we help to recruit. So and a lot of employers talk to us about skill shortages, trouble with recruiting, all of those kinds of things. So those are all aspects of career-related activities that me and my team can deliver. We offer a bespoke service, so it's not an off-the-shelf package. It's very much dependent on employer needs and the needs of the employee as well. So as part of the Disability Confident program, we can support employers and employees with their very much individual needs. Next slide, please. So our careers advisors, and they're all qualified to level 4 or level 6, so you can be reassured that they're giving out best quality careers advice and guidance. We are funded by the DfE, and we are required to be impartial and provide the best possible information. So we work with local market information, local intelligence. As I say, it's completely free and impartial, and we work with anybody who's over the age of 19. So those are the only criteria to enable us to work with someone. So our careers advisors will carry out workforce audits for you if that's something you would like us to do on your behalf. After we've completed those audits, we can identify any training needs. So people who perhaps been in a role for a while may want to progress to a different role, perhaps as a trainer or someone who's head of department or something like that, or perhaps do something completely different within your organisation. So we can have a look at their current training needs and anything that they would like to do in the future. After we've had those appointments, we do a tailored development plan. We call them action plans. So we will provide all of the information they need. We will provide warm handovers to training providers if that's the route that they would like to go. We also work with other organisations to help improve people who are currently looking for work. So, for example, we work with job centres, we work with employability programmes. So they may have people on their caseloads already, and with our help to help them prepare for interviews, perhaps work with their CVs, perhaps improve some of their skills, so we can look to fill those vacancies that you may have. And another aspect, we don't necessarily like talking about it, but something we do is to support employers and employees with anything redundancy related. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do over the course of the next couple of slides is just go through in a little bit more detail some of the ways that my team can actually provide that practical hands-on support for you and your employees. Next slide, please. So recruitment. So as I mentioned, we work with people on our own caseloads, and we also work with a lot of other organisations who have people who are currently looking for work or currently looking for a change role. So we can help find those skilled people. So if you're able to tell us what you're looking for, we will probably have those people already on our caseloads, or with one of our stakeholders or other contracts. So we can help identify those really good quality candidates for your roles. We can help improve the quality of applications. So we quite often attend careers fairs, careers events, employer days, recruitment days, those kinds of things. And one of the conversations that I frequently have with employers is the low quality of applications they receive. Sometimes that's just down to candidates not quite knowing what to fill in an application form. So something very practical like helping them fill application forms is something that we can do. We can also help pre-screen your applicants. So you may be bombarded, your advert may be really fantastic and lots of people want to come and work with your company, and you maybe feel that you're inundated with applicants. So we can help pre-screen and pre-interview for you if that's something you would like to do. Next slide, please. Retention of talent. So whenever I talk to employers, the first thing they say to me is, you're not going to get my employees to leave, are you? And I can categorically say that's absolutely not what we want to do. We want employees to feel valued and wanted and feel that they can progress within your employment. So there's a whole range of tools and activities that we do with your employees, but just to give you a flavour of the kind of things we do. So we do something called career health checks and skill health checks. So that's tools and activities that we use to very quickly analyse where they're at currently. So that gives us a really clear picture of what's needed. So, for example, they may have been doing a job very successfully for 20 years or something, but don't necessarily have the qualifications to back it up. And certainly if they want to apply for a different role within your company, they may feel that they need that qualification to back up their application. So we can have a look at that. So we work with all of the local training providers, we'll work with national training providers, and we also work with organisations who have funding to spot purchase very bespoke training pieces. So we can identify that and help them through that and do the warm handover, so don't necessarily have to go through the enrolment process within FEs and HE environments. So we can do that piece to help people through. And as you may be aware, a couple of years ago, the government launched a Skills for Life initiative. So that's basically ensuring that everyone's qualified to a good standard. So there's a lot of employees don't have a level 2 or level 3 qualification. So that's something we can help with. And it's something that's whether to suit you and your employee, it could be they do day release, they could be digital courses that they attend in their spare time. It could be that trainers go into your environment. So these are all conversations that we can have with you and training providers just to get the best possible outcome for you and your employees. Next slide, please. Okay, so hopefully I've whetted your appetite and I've given you some information about how National Career Service can support people in employment and support employers. So on this slide here, I've got my contact details, jill.brinsden@seetecplus.co.uk. Don't expect you to remember that. As I said, I do believe that you're getting copies of these slides after today. So thank you very much for listening today, and please do get in touch if we can help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Great to hear of all the free support available. Please do get in touch if you'd like to find out more about how National Careers Service can help you to upskill and retain your staff. So next we'll have our question and answer panel. If you haven't sent them in yet, there is still time to pop one in the chat. Also, it would be great to know what action and tips you'd like to take away from today. Please do also pop this into the chat. So over to Geraldine.
Hi everybody, I have got some comments and questions. So just to start with, Situ Living Limited have said that they are hoping to be more accessible and make appropriate adjustments for those who need it. And Emma says, I'm from the Wimborne Academy Trust, and along with my colleague Andrew, we are looking to apply for disability confident status. So Emma and Situ Living, if you either want to pop your email in the chat, perhaps starting with @JaneForrest, FORREST, or scan the QR code and we'll be in touch with you and we can help you on your journey there. So for Ruth at Exeter University, I've got a message from Claire Harris in Cornwall saying it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Ruth and the team over the last 3 years. And a question from Becky, if we start with this for Ruth, have you any suggestions as to how we could simplify and streamline the recruitment process?
Thanks, Becky, for that question. I saw that in the chat. So I guess I would say I think it's not just about streamlining and simplifying. I mean, Kim touched on the cost of sort of churn, and I think Jill mentioned about sort of the quality of applications. We did an event with the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce actually, and a business down here, Bluefruit Software. They were talking about some of the changes that they've made to their recruitment process, and they've basically shifted so that rather than asking people for CV and letter and that kind of traditional way of doing recruitment, they've actually they think about what kind of tasks will the person be doing in the role that they're recruiting to, and then come up with questions sort of relevant or examples that are relevant to that role. So they also take off names. And so I guess what that has allowed them to do partly is to widen the pool of applicants that might look at that role and feel that they could stand a chance of getting it. So they get more career changers, for example, people whose experience might have come from outside of previous employment. So I'm not sure if that sort of specifically answers your question, but I guess I would just say that simplifying and streamlining is also about making sure that you're getting the right person in the role and a good fit for it. And so, yeah, that's one example we've come across. I think it was also mentioned earlier, perhaps around sharing some of the questions in advance of interviews, which is something that more employers we're talking to have been doing, just to allow people to perform at their best and really show what they're capable of in that interview process.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And in fact, that was going to be the next question that I was going to put to Melanie and Kevin, actually, is a really, really good question from Nikki. Would employers be willing to share the interview questions and allow pre-recorded answers to be shared where a candidate struggles with anxiety, low confidence or learning disabilities? And whether you've got any thoughts on that. Just to add before I ask you to answer that is Ruth from Dyslexia Cornwall has said that Dyslexia Cornwall, they actually give candidates time beforehand to consider interview questions before they present their answers. So first of all, over to Melanie. Melanie, do you have any thoughts around sharing interview questions for candidates that might struggle with anxiety or learning disabilities?
Yeah, and it's something actually the recruitment teams have been looking at, and they've been doing a couple of sessions with each other about kind of brainstorming what can they do, how do they get away from the old way of recruiting, and perhaps that standardisation and looking at things slightly differently and out of the box. So that has come up, and something that they're currently reviewing about how they can approach not just sharing things in advance, but also looking at the interview pattern, the style, the location for it, what does work best, and really being quite upfront and just asking if people have got anything they want to share that would make the experience more easier for them or that would suit their requirements. So not explicitly calling out disability, but just making it more of a broader question. And therefore it's allowing people to come forward and put that, because we found that, our disclosure rate for ourselves internally is quite low. So I think we're conscious that not everybody likes to disclose early on. So I think just being a bit more open with the questions maybe, and leaving it to the individual to kind of raise what they want to is kind of the route we're looking at.
Yeah, fantastic. Making it about what can we do to help everybody at interview, really, isn't it? And Kevin, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. And just really to add to what Melanie's already shared, I would see that as actually being a reasonable adjustment. in those circumstances anyway. So I think positive, progressive employers are always going to look to find a way. We want to create a level playing field for people, and we want to set people up for success. So I think when we get those requests, we should be responding in a positive way. And remember, for the employer, if people go away with a positive experience of feeling fairly treated in that, whether they're successful in getting the role or not, that's really good for the employer's brand and reputation. Those ripple effects are noted. So it's not just about doing the right thing for people. There's actually a compelling business case for doing it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good point. Okay, thank you. So the next question, and again, if I can perhaps put this to Stu to begin with, and then Melanie and Kevin. So Stu, can you tell us about how you support people with mental health conditions in the workplace?
Yeah, it's, you know, I guess the nature of the beast of what we do. You know, we're dealing with people that are struggling with mental health problems all the time, be that long-term problems or short-term problems. And the tendency is to forget that actually your staff are going through that as well. It's a really high-pressured environment. So what we're looking at the moment is increasing the amount of sort of contact that they have with each other. So it's utilising things like the peer support networks. It's making sure that we've got the focus groups as well that are sort of giving them the opportunity to have any time that they need. You know, in a high pressure environment, you're literally going from sort of, you know, appointment to appointment, and it's easy to just kind of get lost in your work, which is not a good environment to have. So what we've been trying to do locally is to actually give people that sort of quiet time that they might need, that sort of processing time. We've introduced a load of wellbeing champions across the pillar as well, which has been really, really, you know, gratefully received, not just again from participants, but actually from staff as well. I would say staff are utilising that service more than participants at the moment. That service allows them somebody to talk to if they need to. They also are arranging wellbeing events, you know, making sure that they've got opportunities to talk about any of the issues that they've got. It's raising the awareness for the line managers and things like that. So it's a huge part of what we do, both from a delivery perspective, but also from you know, taking care of our own people as well. So it's something that, you know, we need to be doing more of, especially, you know, in the current circumstances with the cost of living crisis and all of the other kind of lifestyle events that are going on around us at the moment. So it's being more aware of it, and it's giving your staff the chance to be able to actually to say that they are struggling with certain things. I think that's the overriding point for me today that's come out of this. Is it's that fear, isn't it? It's a two-way thing. It's fear from employers of certain issues and concerns that people might have, but it's also fear from people themselves of opening up about those things, and we need to create that environment where people feel comfortable enough to do that.
Thanks, Stu. Kevin, have you got anything you'd like to add about supporting people with mental health conditions in the workplace?
Yeah, just a couple of quick points, Geraldine, because I know time is pressing. So there's a famous quote from an amazing CEO we know who said, "Your immediate line manager at work is more important for your health and well-being than your own family doctor." So that relationship is so important and integral. So I'd always encourage employers to really double down, especially on emotional intelligence training, empathy, compassion. You know, that understanding, that care and considerate approach is really important. And just to add to what Stu has said, Reece, about the really, again, tackling fear is important. We open up those conversations. Often we talk about that building a psychologically safe environment where I can talk openly about how I'm feeling, and that will be met without judgment in a supportive way. Because if people feel able to talk about mental health in the same way they do as physical health, I think we'll be making a lot of progress.
Wow, yeah, that's a really interesting point about the relationship with the manager. Gosh. Melanie, anything just to add quickly on that one, the mental health support in the workplace?
Yeah, I agree with what Kevin and Stuart have said. We've got a really well-established network, You Matter, and they've done a phenomenal amount of work the last few years, you know, pre-COVID. It's all about that ask twice. I think it's kind of the feedback we've got. You know, you ask somebody once and they might shrug you off and say they're okay, but asking twice actually just triggers it a little bit. And we've done a number of so many inclusivity sessions, webinars, where we've had people from our business just sharing their experience. So whether that's a really senior chef in the business, so we know that men in particular don't tend to share their mental health. So actually we've had some really heartwarming shares and stories that people have opened up to, and that's triggered a knock-on effect. And then we also have You Matter ambassadors within across all sectors and within all units, and they're all mental health trained. So we do kind of a internal training, but there's also mental health first aider through the national qualification as well. So yeah, really pleased to say we're trying. I think we've got the benefits, like you say, about employee assistance program, financial. So we try where we can, but there's always so much to do and share.
Yeah, fantastic point about the mental health first aid there as well. Really good point. Just one last question around the National Career Service and the support for employers. This is from Lisa at Arcus. Absolutely, it is across the UK. National Career Service runs throughout the country. And what I'll do is I'll put the details of their website in the chat in a minute. Basically, you can contact them or phone them, and they'll ask you what area you're in, and they'll put you in contact with the right team. So I'll pop that in the chat in a minute, and that includes the South East Claudia as well. So that's it from the questions. So just to say, don't forget, if you would like us to make contact to support you on your disability confident journey or support you with your recruitment needs, as I said before, just pop a message in the chat or scan the QR code and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Back to Emma.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all of the questions that have been sent in. What a packed agenda. There is always so much to explore and consider when we discuss disability confident. With the economic climate and challenging recruitment market, it's not only vital that employers understand and take action to improve inclusivity in the workplace, but it clearly makes very good business sense. Knowing that 1 in 5 people in the UK are disabled really, for me, puts into perspective how much of a priority disability confident is and should be. Thank you to all of our guest speakers for taking the time to share with us today. It's important that we keep the conversation flowing and continue to see positive change in this area. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in. Please do get in touch to access any of the support mentioned in today's session. And finally, thank you to our wonderful team tirelessly working in the background to ensure that we can facilitate these sessions.